So Luffy tries to take a bite out of Lucci in this chapter. Well, not even a bite, just he tries to eat Lucci whole. Welcome back to the Straw Hat Duo. My name's Charlie, and we are getting into chapter 1070 of One Piece, the last chapter of the year. This chapter is titled The Most Powerful Beings, and the cover page is the Germa 66's Cold-Blooded Voyage, volume 27. Promising scientists gather for the sake of the world and all mankind. So it is bats. There's Judge, Caesar, Vegapunk, Queen, and a few other people. One looks like the back of Stussy. We get right back into this chapter with Battle Axe Sentomaru falling after being hit. Luffy's like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to distract you. Sentomaru's like, yeah, don't underestimate me. I saw that attack coming. I just couldn't block it. I tried. Lucci's like, yeah, you're tough, but I need you out of the picture. You can take command of the Seraphim over top of us. So we gotta get rid of you. At this point, Lucci tries to attack Sentomaru again, and Luffy uses Gum Gum Booming White, which is also White Dawn or something like that, or Dawn White. I'm not entirely sure the name of the attack, but yeah, he uses that. It's pretty much like a powerful pistol. Yeah, I think it's like a punch, but it's like right across the face of Lucci. It doesn't look like it's direct hit. But then he sits there and like starts spinning like a Tasmanian devil, and uses Booming White Whip. And Luffy realizes, oh wait, I spun too fast. I can't slow down. Ends up just turning into like a pretty much a tornado. If you ever seen Tasmanian Devil, pretty much that, with the eyes going around and everything. We see Chopper and Jinbei there carrying the Vegapunk, the big Vegapunk. Atlas. Chopper's like, Luffy, hurry up. We got to get to the lab, get to the rocket. And Luffy's like, I can't stop. I spun too hard. And all of a sudden, Luffy just starts spinning away. He's like, Chopper's like, wait, where are you going? The residents of Egghead Island all start to take shelter, so they're safe. The Seraphim that are still under Sentomaru's control at this point in time take out a lot of CP0, just the no-names out there. We see the Mihawk Seraphim, the Jinbei Seraphim. They're fighting Mihawk Seraphim with his sword, S-Shark with Swim Fruit, using that, and I believe Fishman Karate in conjunction with that. And Kaku's there. He's like, yeah, they're unstoppable. And if that isn't bad enough, we'd still lose if we found a way to destroy them. It's even more terrifying when you think they're just children. Yeah, I mean, they're extremely powerful, and we hear a little bit more about that a little bit later. We cut over to lab at this point, and Frankie's sitting there crying, bawling his eyes out. He's like, Vegapunk, that's the fruit I'm talking about, the shrimpy version of Jinbei. It's using the swim fruit, right? That power belongs to Senor Pink. He's my sworn brother from the Don Quixote family. He's like, only one person can have the fruit at a time, though. So does that mean he bit the dust? Does that mean he died? And Vegapunk just kind of goes, huh? Well, so you noticed. Okay, so that man is currently an inmate at Impel Down, and this confuses Frankie. He's like, wait, so are you saying you made a copy of his fruit? And Vegapunk's like, yeah, so far, it's only been possible to manufacture zone artificial fruits, such as Kaido's, but Kaido's is a special exception as well. But he's like, there's also the Caesar's Smile fruit method, but Vegapunk finds that unacceptable. Nami kicks in a little bit here. He's like, yeah, he could die 1,000 deaths, and it still wouldn't be enough, showing how Nami feels about Caesar, and for good reason. A lot of people seem to forget that Caesar was literally experimenting on children. Vegapunk continues on at this point. He's like, I'm fairly certain with unlimited resources, even special types of devil fruits could be recreated, but he's not sure if synthesized devil fruits in that fashion can be awakened. So there's the possibility that they can make devil fruits, but there may never be an awakening, such as Lucci's awakening, such as Luffy's awakening. And actually, that means there's no confirmation that Kaido was awakened. Yeah, so Kaido might not have been awakened. Interesting. Katakuri. Katakuri's also awakened. So, and Doflamingo. I don't know why I forgot him. Shayna literally just watched the arc, for one, and two, the Don Quixote families talked about in this chapter. That's the case. They may not be able to be awakened. And then Vegapunk continues, he's like, I tried my hand at Logia's, but they're harder than expected. There's alternative for Paramecia types. He found that he could synthesize the blood additive from a Paramecia's lineage factor, and that will grant the power once transfused. So pretty much transfusing the DNA of one person into another. Medically. He's like, yeah, I call it green blood, and you see the wristband or part of the arm of the Seraphim and it's just filled with like green liquid. And he's like, I call it green blood. Frankie freaks out at this point. He's like, you're telling me you created blood? And then we see S Snake, Boa's Seraphim, and it's using the Love fruit and turning the Marines into stone. We then see the Kuma Seraphim, S Bear, I believe it is, and he's using Ursus Shock, the same move that he used against the Straw Hats on Thriller Bark. And he's sitting there taking out a bunch of the Marines. Vegapunk continues, the Seraphim are an accumulation of my ideas, the peak of what our science can accomplish. He doesn't say this, but I'm going to say it at this time, because there's always going to be something to one up in One Piece. There's always going to be something new. And when if Vegapunk does make it to his ship, to the Straw Hats ship, I'm sure there's going to be a brand new thing that they're going to come up with, and they're going to develop even more. It's going to be a eureka moment. That's the only reason I have my doubts about Vegapunk actually making it to the ship. I don't know if that's going to actually happen. He's like, yeah, the Seraphim may very well go down as the most powerful beings in the entire history of the sea. And Nami's like, so that's why the warlord system was abolished. They don't need it anymore. And Usopp's like, hey, do you have any idea what you've let loose? Freaking out because they're obviously enemies at the moment. Well, the Seraphim and the Straw Hats. And Sanji's like, so they're basically just, Navy weapons. And Robin actually looks a little concerned here too. And she's like, yes, and they pose a huge threat to us. So at this point, we jump back to the fight between Luffy and Lucci, and we see Lucci stepping out of a hole in the wall. It's like a Roadrunner, or a Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote, hole in the wall. Shape of him, hands up. If Lucci was shaped like the Wile E. Coyote, that would be what we would leave. But at this point, Lucci's like, you know what? We're going right back to it. We're going to go back, fight, and end Sentomaru. So he uses Shave and tries to attack her. And it's at this point where right in front of Lucci, a giant Luffy head appears and just crashes into the ground, mouth wide open. Luffy's mouth is as big as Lucci. Lucci, he looks shocked. He's like, Straw Hat ends up avoiding it and manages to get out of the way. But Luffy just takes a giant bite out of the ground. He turns around to see Lucci, avoiding it up into the air. He's got his cheeks full of just rubble. He turns around and presses down on both of his cheeks and just starts shooting the rubble out at Lucci. It looks like a handful of them hit Lucci, and then Lucci, I believe, manages to get back to Luffy and hit Luffy with a punch. However, the punch knocks Luffy back into a hose or a pipe, travel pipe of some sort, and Luffy turns it into rubber, bouncing off of it like it's a wrestling ring rope, and starts to stretch it and uses Gum Gum Booming White Rocket. So Dawn White Rocket, maybe. He sits there, stretches it back, gets a big smile on his face, reaches up into his hair and creates goggles out of nothing and puts them on. So they're maybe an enhanced version of Usopp's goggles that he got at one point, but they're just goggles to cover his eyes. And he sits there, shoots off of the hose that he turned to rubber, and uses Gum Gum Booming White Rocket, which is probably like Dawn Rocket or something like that in translation. He uses that and just hammers Lucci right in the center, makes him cough up all kinds of blood, and in his head he's like, what insane power, I'm losing consciousness, can't hold on. Same thing he said back in Water 7, Impel Down? I think it was Impel Down. But he sits there and starts to pass out. Chopper and Jinbei at this point, they're like, okay, let's go. We got to go. The Boa Seraphim, it's like, hey, the vacuum rocket's waiting this way. Hurry and get on. Jinbei's like, hey, you have my gratitude. It's nice to see such a kind version of you, Hancock. And she turns all tsundere at this point, you insolent dummy. I'm just following orders, blah, blah, blah. And the rocket's like, T-minus 1 minute till takeoff. Chopper's like, hey, Luffy, come on, hurry up. We gotta go. And intercom's like, please refrain from trying to board last minute. Sentomaru at this point sits up and says, Straw Hat, I'm trusting you with Grandpa Punk. Luffy's like, yeah, you got it. And still in his Gear 5th form, I guess manages to make it over to the rocket. And he's like, I'll get him off this island, no matter what. Then we cut over to the rocket. Bonnie is starting to wake up. Luffy is in his old shriveled form, like he is after he leaves Gear 5th. And Chopper's like, it's so fast. Bonnie's like, where are we? Who's this? What's going on? She's freaking out. Jinbei's like, yeah, it's a long story. That's Luffy. We're going to the lab. That's all you need to know. Explanations later. Deal with it now. The intercom comes over and is like, the approximate travel time journey time is 32 seconds. So they managed to make it over to the lab, and once they get in, Luffy is looking like he's back to normal. We see that the Frontier Dome has been fortified. It says intruders have infiltrated and to be on high alert. All the lab workers, please remember to barricade the factory shelters properly. So pretty much they're going on full lockdown. And then we cut back over to CP0 and we see them talking. They're like, you have to hand it to him. Vegapunk couldn't ask for a better bodyguard. And then they look over at Sentomaru and they're like, this is a real pity, Sentomaru. Our orders are to wait for the Marines. If we wait too long, they'll get away. Then we cut back over to the lab and they're like, they seriously want you dead. Isn't that a waste for the government? You're the world's smartest man. And would you rest easy if you thought such an intellect would turn against you? Not that I haven't ever intended to do so, mind you. And Nami's there. She's like, oh yeah, I suppose it would make sense to snuff out a potential liability like you. Usopp's like, you talk about killing somebody out like that. God. Vegapunk's like, yeah, an Emperor's crew showing up just as things come to a head. What a serendipitous twist of fate. So now we get the last page of the chapter, last page of the year, which is just so happens to be a double page spread. So we get Luffy meeting up with the rest of his crew, apart from Zoro and Brook, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder how they're doing. I wonder if they're actually going to come on land because of all the stuff that has been going on. They had to have known it. I mean, Zoro at least has to sense it. He sensed it when Green Bull showed up. So I'm sure there's something there. I'm sure he notices something. But the Straw Hat crew, they're kind of split about Vegapunk joining. Nami is like, that's heavy cargo. Sanji's just pissed off about still being stuck to the floor. This first panel on this page does not do Robin justice. Her face kind of looks like Ed from Ed, Edd n Eddy. Just blank stare, eyes almost looking in different directions. It doesn't do her justice. Frankie, he's all excited, and Usopp's all excited about him coming aboard the ship. Usopp's like, are you really going to come aboard? Frankie's like, oh, I'm all for it. I'll show you the General Frankie and the Sunny. Then we cut over to Luffy, walking into the lab, and he's like, wow, where are we? They're like, hey, quick, Dr. Atlas needs attention and repairs. We'll leave you to her. They give them off to the people in the lab. So their crew doesn't quite meet up yet, but they're in the same building now. They're going to meet probably next chapter if the next chapter is following them. Bonnie's like, I'm going to make Vegapunk turn my dad back to normal. If he refuses, he's a dead man. Somebody's like, yeah, remind me to never make you angry. And then we see a large, wide picture of CP0, and the Seraphim are back under their control. We don't know what happened to Sentomaru. Is he dead? Is he just unconscious? Who knows? That's the case. The Seraphim are back under Lucci's control, or CP0's control, and we see Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy standing there with all four of the Seraphim: Jinbei, Huma, Boa, and Mihawk. Then we cut over to the sea, and we see a Marine battleship. Oh my. So the Straw Hat crew has allied with itself with Vegapunk. On paper, that should make for a straightforward escape, but boy are they in for a surprise if they think it'll be easy. We'll proceed as planned, get as many warships as possible to head to Egghead Island, and we see Kizaru. And that is the last page of the last chapter. So, what do you think's gonna happen next? Are they gonna escape? Are they gonna have to fight CP0 again? There's a lot that could happen at this point. Are we gonna follow up with them next chapter? Probably not. There's a week break. I think there's only a week break. So, we'll have that break for New Year's and whatnot. Shonen Jump is on holiday. I'm surprised there was a chapter today, but hey, I'm not complaining. I didn't want to have to wait like 3 weeks for One Piece again. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this chapter. Let me know what you guys think about the downside of Luffy fighting in Gear 5th. It seems like a similar downside to what was Gear 4th early on. He just loses strength afterwards. It actually looks like he loses his vitality afterwards, instead of just it sapping his strength or his hockey. So that actually kind of makes sense. Gear 2nd, was sapping his life force. Gear 3rd was sapping his strength in general. Gear 4th was sapping his hockey. And Gear 5th probably saps all three. Turns him into an old shriveled man. Yeah, so that's probably the peak of his power. That makes sense. Eventually he'll have to learn how to master it or be in that form permanently. Lucci didn't seem to have any of the downsides about going into his awakening, so there's obviously a mastery of the form, and we've seen it with Luffy. Luffy can go into Gear 3rd without any of the downsides anymore. He's almost constantly in Gear 2nd, it seems. Gear 4th, I mean, he can pretty much go in and out of that. He just kind of staggers it. I'm sure he's got a mastery of it now, and he may still have to use it at times. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought about it, and we'll see you in the next one.